Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. There's a lot of rumors out there about Sting being forced in retirement. We're really lucky that Sting is getting, put into the WrestleMania Hall of Fame here at WrestleMania 32 in 2016. Sting was a guy that held out on WWE for a long time, and finally got his time when he left TNA around WrestleMania 30, and then was brought in for the whole Survivor Series deal when he debuted and made it where Team Cena beat the Authority, and then he came back again to make sure that Seth Rollins lost to John Cena to make sure that Dolph Ziggler, Eric Rowan, and Ryback got their jobs back right before the Royal Rumble, which hyped up him coming in and having the match against Triple H at WrestleMania 31. I guess that he hadn't really officially retired, but in my mind, Sting sort of retired after WrestleMania 31. I thought that was it. I thought that when he came back at Night of Champions and he had the match against Seth Rollins, I thought that honestly that was a lot like a Mick Foley return. When Mick Foley retired, they brought him back right away for WrestleMania 2000 because they needed to have four big names to have the Fatal 4-Way. There was some thought of putting Chris Jericho into that main event, and somehow it got vetoed, and it ended up being the storyline was that Linda McMahon brought in Mick Foley because she thought that he had a chance to win it. I think that Foley was the first guy eliminated from the match. But he got his WrestleMania moment. He got to be in the main event, and everybody from WWF was happy at the time. But then, of course, he sat out for a while, and then he came back quite a few times to wrestle one more match here, one more match there. I can remember him showing up at one of those fans get to vote for the matches at the pay-per-view deal, where I think it was Carlito, and you got to vote if it was Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, Dude Love, or Mankind. It was sort of a deal like that. But then, of course, he had the deal with Randy Orton, and he came back for WrestleMania 20, and, he wrestled a match here, he wrestled a match there, but I sort of looked at it as Sting had already been retired, and, when Sting came over from TNA to WWE, I never really was the biggest Sting fan. I really do appreciate a lot of the things that he did. The hottest times to be a wrestling fan, when I was into WCW, when I was into the NWO, it was always, the back burner thing was, they might be heating up a match between Piper and Hogan, but you were in that long-term effect of trying to figure out what was going on with Sting. You could, if you were really watching and really could tell what was going on, you could tell that he wasn't with the NWO. You could tell that they were building up to a match that would be, Hogan versus Sting. And I think the whole thing that they did with the NWO and Sting and Hogan in the championship, I think that hurt Sting's legacy in the long run. Because to me, honestly, that whole storyline was who was going to beat the NWO, who was going to be the guy that put the NWO over, or put the NWO under and killed them off. And honestly, when you build up to that Starrcade, Sting versus Hogan, and you have the whole deal of Sting winning the championship, and then of course it came out that Nick Patrick had a slow count, which honestly wasn't that slow, and then they pulled a whole bunch of crap out of the bag. The NWO kept on living. I think that we've seen with the Hulk Hogan WCW contract that has come to light here in the last few months. Hogan was getting paid a lot of money to just wear an NWO T-shirt. I think he got paid like $20,000 a month just to wear a shirt. And I guess when you're getting paid $20,000 a month just to wear an NWO shirt, you're going to make sure the NWO doesn't die. So I know I would. But I know then you got the whole thing of Sting going into the Wolf Pack, and then WCW just completely went off the edge. And it was almost like Sting could wrestle a good match, but Sting couldn't save the company, so it wasn't like he was writing the show or anything like that. He just was going along with whatever it was. I'm sure that he wasn't 100% innocent, because there are a lot of stories about people not wanting to work with some people, and some people not wanting to show up to work, and all sorts of deals, like that. I don't really know the official date of when Sting got officially clean of everything, and accepting the Lord into his life and everything like that. But Sting has said that he wasn't 100% innocent when WCW closed. I guess there was no intention on Sting's point to come to WWE. I don't ever really even remembering it being a priority of WWE trying to sign Sting, but it was a surprise when he did show up in TNA. But in my mind, it sort of seemed like TNA had already been seen as low rent. They opened in 2002. I don't think he debuted until like 2005. It's around the time I remember hearing that he was there, and Sting's a big name, but Sting wasn't a big enough draw to make me really want to watch the company a ton. Over time, I started to like TNA, and I started to watch it. Maybe it's just being a wrestling fan and just trying to support wrestling. But I don't know. When the rumors started coming out about Taker versus Sting, that was a big match that I always wanted to see. And I don't know why. I mean, Sting said that they were really close, but at the last moment, he got scared. And he ended up, staying with TNA, and he ended up getting a few more years out of the deal. But at the end, I think it hurt him more than it helped him. I mean, when you watch the Sting documentary on Into the Light, and you see him experiencing his first WrestleMania, going to WrestleMania Access, and being brought into the WWE hotel, and seeing what it's like to walk out in front of 70,000 plus fans. You could tell that he felt like he cheated himself. Like, it was safe for him to be in TNA. He got to do whatever he needed to do. He got to do whatever he wanted. He didn't have to work that much. But he could have been living the life of really being a big star in professional wrestling for the last few years of his life. And instead, he only got to come in for a few shows here and there, and, of course, wrestle at WrestleMania. So, it sort of sucks. And plus, we never got the Taker versus Sting match that we would have got, that in WWE's mind at the time possibly would have saved WrestleMania 27, which was starting to slip apart at the time, because that was one of the big plans they had. Of course, when they didn't get Sting, they tried to get Goldberg. Goldberg decided that they want too much money, and they had to put Triple H in that spot. And I got to see possibly one of the greatest matches that I'll ever see in my life live. And I'll never forget what it felt like to watch that match, thinking that Triple H actually was going to be the guy who beat the streak, because I thought that thing was ending. When Sting came from TNA to WWE, the rumors were out there. I kept saying I only wanted three things. I wanted Sting to go into the WWE Hall of Fame, I wanted to see him wrestle Taker, and I wanted them to come out with a documentary. And as a WWE DVD fan, we've got two releases. Both of them are honestly really good. The Best of Sting came out first, and it's just a whole bunch of matches that covers his whole career. And then, of course, they came out with Sting Into the Light, which I think is already on the WWE Network if you haven't seen this yet. And it comes with a collection of matches as well. I've always wanted the documentary to have the greatest matches together. I guess maybe they wanted to capitalize on signing Sting, and they thought if they came out with two releases, it was better. I like the fact that on the documentary you get to see him at WrestleMania 31, so I guess it's better that they waited a year in order to get it. Sting's going into the Hall of Fame. That's where people are thinking that he's going to be making this announcement that he can no longer wrestle, and he's going off to hide in at his ranch where he lives in Dallas now. People still think he's a California guy, but I don't know, man. It just, in my mind, I already thought Sting was done. So I'm happy he's going into the Hall of Fame. When I think about his career, I'll always sort of remember in the back of my mind is how much people really wanted to see him fight Taker. People wanted to see him in WWE for a long time, and he didn't come. I don't want to portray him as being scared, but it is kind of weird. Now he had so many offers and he didn't want to come here, and the only excuse he ever really made is that promo between Booker T and The Rock back in 2002 when The Rock said to Booker T, "Who are you?" Which I've always said, The Rock said that to everybody: Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Dudleys, Booker T, anybody who was in the company at the time. It just was his tagline. I don't know if he was unfamiliar with The Rock, but I don't see how you could be involved in professional wrestling and not understand that that's what The Rock did for everybody. But we'll see what happens from here on out. Sting has said that he wants to have some sort of a job within WWE. He wouldn't mind an on-screen character. I don't know if that means you bring him in as the GM. I don't think it works. Mick Foley was a great GM, and they had a lot of GMs that stuck around for a really long time. They had Regal, they had Teddy Long, they had Booker T. I don't know, man. I guess you have to have some sort of authority figure on the show. As a kid, we didn't get to see him all the time like you do on every episode of Raw. But, Jack Tunney played the role. And Gorilla Monsoon, he had a sort of a mildly television role when he was the commissioner of WWF, and he would come out and make big announcements and things like that, but you wouldn't see him on every edition of Raw. Maybe that is what they need, just somebody who shows up every once in a while. But the way they rebook and rewrite Raw all the time, you got to have everybody there each and every week, because you never know what they're going to do in order to try and build up a big angle for a show. But I don't know. I don't think Sting as the GM of Raw or the GM of SmackDown is going to help anything along the way. But I hope he enjoyed his career. As a wrestling fan, I enjoyed his career. He honestly was never one of my favorite guys. He was a good guy. He just wasn't one of my favorite guys. So I'll see you guys down the road, and peace out. See you guys down the road.